All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. This is Archangel Odyssey. And today we are going to be talking about the map. Before we do, love to hear from some of you. What insights did you gain from doing the transformation inventory tool? So I was reading through all of your posts, loved the diversity in answers and diversity and even how you took your screenshots. It was really cool. I love everyone has their own style of things. Some people handwriting, some people typing, some people retyping in a different format. I love Anne's images all the time. So thank you, Anne. So what insights did you gain from doing the transformation inventory tool? Please let me know in the chat. So Gita says a lot of clarity. I love that. What else happened for all of you? And Stephanie said life got in the way of homework. We'll get to it later for sure. That's totally fine. Go at your own pace. Emmy realized how much transformation I actually provide. Emmy, that's awesome. Thank you. Stanley demystifies the process. And David, very interesting to think of the opposites. Completely reframe the idea of knowing your customer story. Yes. It is crucial to know both sides of the equation. And sometimes you have to fill in the blank by knowing the other side of the story. So sometimes you have a better picture of the after, sometimes you have a better picture of the before, but then by going through this process, you tell a more concise and better story. So thank you all for everything you shared. So let's talk about the map. As I mentioned, you can think of your map as the bridge from their present day reality to their dream come true future. Now, as part of this process, we are going to narrow down your offer into one promise. One promise. And this can sometimes be challenging because depending on the type of work you do, you may have different outcomes or create different outcomes for people. And that's totally fine. It's in how we position and package the offer itself as one mega promise. That within the promise, there may be a bunch of different outcomes or transformations or results that you can help someone with. But the idea is to narrow down and get more specific with the promise. And as you take more people through your, what I call your guided tour, you are their guide, you're the tour guide, you do the transformation over and over again, the promise not only becomes more specific, but it becomes more predictable. And the place I want all of us to get to is to be able to make a predictable promise, because that becomes your brand, that becomes your reputation, that becomes your unique value in the marketplace. And it becomes your differentiator in a way that makes it hard for other people to copy what you're doing. And one of my clients, Jenny, you can find her on Instagram at coach_JVB, has been in the fitness space for years. And her current promise, it says, I help moms become fitness models, which I love. It's so concise. And with as few words as possible, you can get a picture of what she's doing. Now, I'm sharing this because this hasn't always been the promise. I'm sure years ago it was, I help people get in shape, right? And then it might have been, oh wait, I seem to like working with women, so I help women get in shape or build muscle or whatever the promise was. And then noticing, wait a minute, a lot of the people I help are moms, and they seem to be the ones I really enjoy working with. So I help moms get in shape. And then chances are some of them said, I love the fact that you're in magazines, on the cover of magazines. How do I get into magazines? So the reason I'm sharing this story is because the process of understanding and designing your promise is an organic one. And it requires a feedback loop with people you're working with. It requires conversations, and it requires you to pay attention to patterns. What keeps coming up on both sides? On your side, like what lights you up about the work you do? Who can you help? How have you helped them? And what's coming up on the client side of things that they really appreciate, things that they pay attention to, that they care about, biggest transformations, biggest feedback you're getting, or testimonials or stories, and looking at where they overlap. Now, imagine your program was a book. The predictable promise of your program would be the title. And the map, what we're going to start talking about today, would be like the table of contents. So that's how I want to frame this for you in terms of how to think about what we're talking about. And if your map was a treasure map, the predictable promise is the treasure. So your dream client wants whatever's in the treasure box. That's the promise. They know they want it. They don't know how to get it. And they need your map. They need the direction. And it's very well hidden because otherwise they'd probably find it themselves. So if you saw the training earlier this week, here's an example of a map that you would recognize. This is the Odyssey map. Circle, transformation, the map, the blueprint, etc. And there are two questions that we want to have answered by the end of our time together. So this one you've already seen. By the end of the 12 weeks, working together with your dream client, what has to happen for them in terms of their goals, growth, transformation, and outcomes for them to consider the experience a dream come true. And what one outcome, result, change, or transformation can you help your dream client achieve in 90 days or so? It doesn't have to be exactly 90 days, but around that time frame, that will help make their dream come true. This becomes your predictable promise. So there's a tool I like to share called the Hero's Path. I'll walk you through it really quickly because part of it will help you in this process and in this journey. And it's a tool that helps create confidence, leadership, and direction with 4 specific milestone outcomes to your dream clients. And it's the payoff goal, the outcome goal, the dream goal, and the moonshot goal. I'll quickly explain all of this. The one we're going to focus on is the outcome goal. The payoff goal is typically the shortest time frame, let's say 1 to 30 days. It's the easiest thing to measure in terms of a result, easiest result for your client to achieve. It creates momentum for your dream client. It is a milestone on the way to their outcome goal, and it's about getting a quick win. So if Odyssey is my outcome goal for all of you about launching or growing a group program in 90 days, when we did Superwords as a 5-day program, that was the payoff goal. It was providing a quick win on the journey to the outcome goal. It could also be the first phase of your entire process. Maybe there's, so I'll come up with one. If you helped people write a book, so if that was your service, you have a process that takes people through all the stages of writing and publishing a book so that the book is being sold. The payoff goal might be coming up with the title, because as the maybe first domino, this is the first thing that happens. And by doing this, we can go on our journey together. So that's an example of payoff goal. We don't have to focus on this right now. Just want to share the whole process. The outcome goal is the dream client's most desired result or biggest problem solved. It is, let's say, around 90 days, which lines up with doing an 8 or 10 or 12 week kind of program. The idea is that they would struggle to do it without your support, guidance, and direction as their guide on this journey. Achieving the goal for them will feel like a success. And it is the repeatable outcome you want to build your brand around. This outcome goal is also going to become your predictable promise. Now, the dream goal is your dream client's dream come true, bigger future. It's let's say typically a 12-month time frame. And if you asked them where they want to be in a year, this is how they would answer based on whatever your niche or industry is. And you can't really provide direction for this goal until they've achieved the outcome goal. So all of the focus up front is on the outcome goal. But then the question might be, well, what happens after? How do I help people after the 12 weeks? This is the next giant milestone for them. And finally, the moonshot goal is often beyond your potential dream client's wildest dreams when you first speak to them. And it is the longest time frame. It could be whatever you want it to be. I like to think of 3 years. It's something that they probably wouldn't believe is possible until they first achieve the 12-month goal, the dream goal. So the point of all of this is to start thinking about all of the work you do as one giant journey, one relationship that keeps deepening. And you always focus on the original outcome to start, but then you don't want to leave people, you don't want to make people feel abandoned after the transformation because they're constantly growing and they want to get to their next level, their next point on their journey, and you want to support them as long as you can. So as you start to think about these things, the journey extends and you get to have the honor of being their guide for as long as possible. And I even mentioned, I like to say that you don't talk about the moonshot goal until they've at least achieved the 90-day outcome goal. And it becomes like planting a seed in the future of what's possible. Because now that they've worked with you, they know they have trust in you in creating the outcome. And if you say, well, this is where we can get to in 3 years, they'll at least feel like it's possible. So that's the tool. The reason why this kind of thinking is useful is because it's very easy or easier to get potential dream clients attracted when you're using specifics. To say, I want to help you get this specific outcome within this specific time frame. And that type of language is very useful in making a promise. It's also very easy or easier to get dream clients to say yes. It'll help add confidence and deepen relationship over time. And it will become easier to get success stories, case studies, and referrals. And finally, part of building confidence for yourself in being able to make your predictable promise is by deepening your level of delivery and taking the tour over and over again. If you remember my tour guide example of doing a tour of a new city with someone who's done the tour 1,000 times, you can tell that they've mastered and they know all the little intricate parts of the tour and they know all the secrets, and it's because they've done it so many times. And it's that kind of thing for all of us. The more you deliver the outcome over and over again, the more you've done the tour over and over again, the more your confidence goes up, the more value you create, the more you can charge. So let's start to map out our map. There's another tool that I use and teach to clients called the 90-day North Star. And the primary use of this tool is for you to map out one goal for the quarter and then reverse engineer how you can achieve the goal. But the really cool thing about this tool is that we can also use it today to start brainstorming the modules or the milestones or the sections of our maps. So, and Ronnie, I see that you have a question. I'll be done in a few minutes in terms of the talking part, and then we'll get right into Q&A to answer any questions that you might have. So this is what the tool looks like. You'll get a copy of this with the replay of today's session. And the first thing to do is think about your 90-day North Star, which is the one dream that has to come true over the next 90 days. This is in reference to your predictable promise to your client, right? So when you go back to the last tool, the inventory, the transformation inventory, what were all of the dreams on the right side of the page that your dream client wants to accomplish in 90 days? And what you do is you kind of brainstorm all those things and then figure out what is the one biggest dream outcome you can help them accomplish that will be highly valuable to them. And again, this is an organic brainstorming process. You may not have an instant fast answer, but the more you go through this, and then like I mentioned earlier, in a future date, you might want to go back and keep iterating and editing as you're getting more and more clarity as we go. So you can brainstorm, then put your one dream for the 90 days in the top box there. And when I teach this tool about goal setting, often when you come up with what your 90-day North Star goal is, your brain starts to tell you why, all the reasons why you can't do it. It's kind of, it's inherent in how our brains work. And you can actually use that component or aspect of how our brains work to help your dream clients solve their problems. So whatever the promise is over 90 days, there's going to be a bunch of resistance or obstacles or challenges. And on this section of the tool, you can start writing those things down. So if you asked your dream client, why won't this happen? Or what are the biggest obstacles you think that could prevent this goal from happening? And then write down as many answers here as possible. This is more of a brainstorming session, and you can do it yourself. And I want you to do this after today's session. I want you to fill this out as if you were having a conversation with a dream client, and this is all of the things they tell you that would prevent the dream from coming true. Now, next to each kryptonite, you can start to brainstorm potential tools and resources and experts and projects and tasks and solutions and ideas and all the potential things that can overcome that specific kryptonite. So you're trying to figure out the micro solutions to each specific challenge or obstacle that they may face. And eventually, these superpowers become the modules of your program and the milestones of your map. Now, as you're going through this process, you want to try and come up with 8 to 12 modules or milestones on the map. If you have a lot more, then I suggest to see if you can group things together into a bigger milestone. And as you're brainstorming, I suggest also to see if there's a natural sequence to the milestones. So as an example, this is the Odyssey one again. We do the circle first, then transformation, then we talk about the map, then we talk about the blueprint. And that is a sequential order that makes the most sense based on which things have to be figured out first before you can move on to the next thing. You, in your world, that may not be necessary. Everything could be standalone where it doesn't actually matter what the order is, but it's sometimes smart to think about what the progression might be that makes the most sense. And that's the 90-day North Star tool. Some more benefits of going through this process that will help you in the future. The first thing is that doing a map like this actually helps you create content. Because, so using this again, if I wanted to send out one email a week to my community, I could, on week 1, I can do an email that talks about the circle or uses the circle as the theme. Then in the next week, I could do something on the transformation. So the idea is I always have a guidepost for what I can be talking about, because I know that if these are the things that are important or as part of the process, it will help nurture relationships. It will also help potentially attract new people into my world, not just for email, for social media, for anything I'm doing. And this one is pretty big. You can use the phases of your map to create a metric. So what do I mean by that? A question that often comes up is, what if my transformation doesn't have an easy measuring tool like money or weight loss? So if you are a investment coach and you help people make more money in the stock market, and you can say, in the next 90 days, I'll help you get this specific money result. That's easy to measure because there's a metric we all understand. If you're in the health space and you say, I will help you lose 20 pounds in 90 days, it's an easy metric to understand. What if the work you do doesn't have an easy metric like that? What I love about this process is that you can literally create your own metric. So this is a tool or an assessment I've used in the past based on another map that I have called the Gifted Marketing Formula. And the idea is that for every phase or module, I've created a specific question that has a scoring system, 1, 2, and 3, right? So if they score low, it's a 1. If they score high, it's a 3. And when they go through the assessment before working with me, they'll come up with a score, and it's usually a lower score. And then the idea is, after going through my process, they do this again, chances are they're going to have a way higher score. So your client can actually see progress and momentum and change by going through an assessment like this based on your map. So you can literally create your own metric that shows the transformation. And I can absolutely share this document, and you'll always get the slides too if you want them. Another important concept is that the transformation can also be a certificate or wisdom exchange. Now, what do I mean by that? How many of you have ever gone through any kind of licensing program? For example, a chiropractor or a medical license or a real estate license, coaching certification program, that kind of idea. So if you have, just maybe put yes in the chat. I have a few different things. Awesome. Now, when you finished that program, what was the transformation? Right? Like when I finished my real estate license, I technically had all of the wisdom I needed to sell real estate. And based on that industry, I also had the permission to sell real estate. I didn't exactly have, well, I mean, I was lucky because I knew how to sell and how to do marketing, but anyone graduating with me, they had one skill set from it, and that wasn't the important transformation, but there's other things they needed. And why I'm saying this is because sometimes wisdom exchange can be the transformation. Providing people with the information, the unique wisdom that you have in and of itself can be a beginning transformation. Imagine that you, at the end of your program, were able to give someone a certificate of completion saying you now know this. Now, the important part of this is that they have the capability of doing something different by going through your process that they didn't have before. And that's the idea of this concept. Same with a college or university degree. Some of the most, especially in the US, a university degree is one of the most expensive pieces of paper ever. And I don't want to debate the value of it, but the idea is that it exists and people understand that it exists, and people invest a lot of money for the piece of paper, for learning, for acquiring wisdom from someone who has it. And what is the outcome from that perspective? You can say it's a piece of paper that hangs on a wall, but really it's wisdom exchange. It's more confidence, is the capability of doing something new. And what problem was solved by going through the licensing or the schooling? So I want you to think about all these things, because no matter what field you're in or industry you're in, there's always a way to create a transformation. There's always a way to create an outcome. Part of it is the journey. And this is the key question. What does your journey, your Odyssey, allow your dream client to do that they couldn't do before? Another cool thing is that your map can become a gift. So the internet marketing world would use the phrase lead magnet. I don't like that kind of language. That's just me. So I call it a gift. And all it really means is that someone provides you their email address in exchange for something of value. It's often, let's say, a PDF or a tool or a video or something. And one of the cool things about going through this process is that you develop phases, stages, or steps of a journey towards a transformation. So if I created a gift about Odyssey, I can call it the 12 steps to launching an online program in 90 days. And then the free thing they receive is a PDF sharing this map and explaining what the phases are. And then if someone wants to go through the journey, they hire us, they join Odyssey to be guided on the tour. And all of you can do the same thing. Once you've gained the clarity of your map, you can leverage the map as a lead magnet or gift to exchange email addresses for that wisdom. One other important thing as we're going through this process over the next few weeks, you can think of each module as its own mini program or mini transformation. So if your map has 10 phases, it could be 10 mini transformations that lead to the large transformation. Now, if you have the opportunity or capability, please chat with either clients or potential clients or anyone who could potentially become a client and ask them these questions. Which promise or outcome is most meaningful for them? And then what do they think would be the biggest obstacles or challenges that could prevent it from happening? If you already work with clients, still ask them. I asked all of you. I'm constantly doing this. And again, this is a forever organic process of refining and deepening and being more specific to who you're helping, what the transformation is, what the journey is. And it's kind of a never-ending process because people are constantly evolving and growing, and you're always learning and you're always creating transformations. So think of it as an experimental process that requires a feedback loop. So the more conversations you have, the more clients you work with, the more specific you can narrow down your promise. And before we get into Q&A, what's been most useful so far from today, and where do you need some clarity? So please share in the chat what's been most useful so far and where do you need clarity. Julia, do you want to share?
Sure. Hey, amazing. I love this. So yeah, when you said because the metric has always been a concern for me when it comes to parenting, it's so sort of vague, but to take each module that I've already created and then to be able to measure within that, like for the self-care sections, for example, but even for the awareness sections, like I could totally see myself building that out for what I already have and making it clearer metric for that. So that is totally awesome. I love it.
What is a question that you could ask that has a metric outcome?
Probably around their awareness, like how often do you check in on what your children are feeling each day, right? And so then to be able to say 80% of the time or 20% of the time, and then have that increase, for example, would be one.
The simplest way of doing that assessment kind of thing for you, Julie, and for everyone here is to start the question with on a scale from 1 to 10. And then what comes after that, where 10 is the dream come true for them and 1 is like the biggest pain in the butt, right? So for you, like Julia, just off the cuff thinking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the peace in your household, where 10 is completely peaceful and 1 is you're literally screaming every 10 minutes, or like whatever that looks like. And then they gauge themselves, oh, I'm a 3. I scream a lot to my kids. So the idea is by the end of your program, that number goes from a 3 to a 7. And that's such a win because they realize, wow, I'm not screaming as much. And then when they combine the full score at the end, it's like, I went from a 35 out of 100 to a 90. We're all used to these kinds of gauges, and yet it's proprietary to you and your process.
Totally. I've done the bigger picture one that you said, but breaking into the little ones gives them so much more feedback immediately. So I love both of those.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome. Jenna? I'll do a couple of these and then we'll get into questions.
Having the modules as book chapters, I'm writing the resourcing method, sourcing is my method I've been unpacking for 5 to 7 years. But as I've been stuck with the book, having that be chapters is just like snow globed my mind. And I'm like, oh, what if it falls differently than why I've been getting stuck with finishing the book? So I'm like, but I ask my clients in the beginning of working together, how much do you feel like you? And it feels intangible, I guess, but they have an answer. I'm like, if 100% is like, I'm me, I wake up, I know who I am, I know what I'm doing. They know what that means because they know the absence of it. And then when we're halfway through, I ask again. And then when we finish, I ask again. So that one question has been helpful. But even weaving that into the content in the book, I didn't think about it. So do I have a question?
We'll do questions in a second, but I just wanted
Okay.
one tip for you. That's for everybody. If you're planning on writing a book, eventually when going through this process of creating your map, and once you deliver the transformation over and over again, and you have so much feedback and data from your clients, you're at the place where I think you can start thinking about writing a book. And when you write the book, at the end of every chapter, you can offer a gift to say, by the way, so let's say my book was about Odyssey, and chapter 3 is about the map. I can say, go to odyssey.com/map and get your free resource or assessment tool on how to create your map. So now it's like content creation, it's email capture, it's all of these things, all by having this one process nailed.
Cool.
Tiffany?
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
I think just being able to like break it down, thinking about it into like these mini transformations, it kind of takes this. I tend to like overcomplicate things, so it's like trying to cram too much into like 12 weeks, for example, right? So instead of focusing, instead just focusing on like these little like mini transformations that eventually get you to like this to the outcome goal, right?
Yeah.
So thinking of these little payoff goals getting to the outcome goal, I think that was like a kind of a light bulb for me.
Cool, thank you. Okay, and snow globe my mind is awesome, Sophie. I agree. Thank you, Jenna, for that. So if you have questions about this process or the map, can you please share or type your question in the chat so I can see it? I think Emmy had one. The chat kind of blew up with all of this stuff. So if you don't mind sharing it again, and I'll answer that question. And then anyone else who has questions, please type them into the chat right now. And as actually, Emmy, why don't you just unmute and ask me?
Yeah, it's going to take me till 3:45 just to type it. That's a good idea. As I typed it twice already, I'm like, damn, I should have had and pasted it. It's okay. So what I want to create is a membership that is really like a mastermind. I mean, level 1 is going to be my fitness classes, and that's fine. And then level 2, they'll get like that plus the mastermind. So obviously there's a transformation to the fitness classes, but let's forget about that for a second. That part I can do. The mastermind piece that I'm like, is wisdom exchange? Is that the transformation? Like, how do you predict a transformation when you don't know who's in your group and what information they're going to share, and how do you create a map? Like I'm really stuck on that.
Yeah, and this is the fine tuning process that I mentioned. It's like a constant evolving process of who you're helping and how you're helping them. And using that Jenny example of, I help people get in shape and then slowly figuring it out. Like if you, let me ask you, do you have an idea of what kind of transformation you want to be creating? Like, what would that be?
Yeah, so I'm working with change makers who want to go from fed up with feeling flat to being full and on fire and in flow again, so that they feel they're full enough that they can fulfill their dreams and create the change they want to see in the world. I'm kind of like a mini Geo, if you will.
And how do you do it? How do you take them from the before to the after?
Well, the thing is that I think what they're lacking, the ones who I've been working with, what they're lacking is that sense of community, that safe space of like even being able to share their big dreams. you know, and so coming together and just being that genius of the room, like, oh, this is this, and this is this, and this is how we can help each other. Like more than me coaching, it's all of us helping each other.
Yeah, like your question was around, I believe, defining wisdom exchange, and then I think Erin had a similar question.
Right.
A simple answer to that question is, if you were to write a book offering the wisdom and the transformation, and it's in a book, that is a book is wisdom exchange. Now,
Right.
you can then take the book and turn it into an online course where you're teaching every chapter and someone pays for the course and they watch it on their own time. Or you can create a coaching program or this kind of guided program where you have a group of people every week coming on and you go through the book one chapter at a time and give them exercises to do and make sure they get it done, so that now it's higher value, higher level. And by the end of it, they've been transformed. So that the idea of the map is the table of contents. Right. And
Right. So I get that when you have a process, but when it's a mastermind, it's not a process. Like it's more open-ended. So I think that's where I'm
okay. So the simple way of doing that is if you know kind of who you want to help and you invite them, you literally co-create with them based on what they need. Right. So you just saw me ask my two favorite questions, and we'll get more into that into a future module, but how to lead a call and that kind of stuff. But I always end with what's been most useful so far and where do you need more clarity? And then questions come up, and guess what you do with those questions? In the next meeting, you answer those questions, and then you say, cool, what was most useful? Where do you need the clarity? The most useful, and this is why it's an iteration process. And when you co-create with the people you want to help, they give you feedback and you keep getting better and better at it. Have I shared the stand-up comedy thing with you guys in here? Because I talked about it earlier in one of my, okay. So this was one of the most useful analogies that helped me of this process, and even about content creation and writing a book and making a program. I love stand-up comedy. I love going to comedy clubs. I love watching comedians. I love Netflix specials of really famous comics. And the last time we produced an event in Hollywood, like Los Angeles. It was January of 2020, right before the world kind of shut down. And across the street from our hotel was the Comedy Store, which is one of the most famous comedy clubs in the world. And like anyone you've ever heard, like Joe Rogan, like anyone who has a Netflix special does stand up at this little club. And what they do, especially if they have a Netflix special, they don't sit down and write all their jokes and then they rehearse and then go to a giant arena or a giant stadium. What they do is they literally write a bunch of jokes, or maybe someone else writes the jokes for them. They go to a little 100-person club with their pad of paper and they say a joke and they get a instant reaction. And it's like, oh, that bombed, or that was amazing. Check or scratch it off. And that's what I was watching them do at Comedy Store. It's wild to see someone so famous testing material. But then they figure out what works. Okay, these jokes get laughed. Then they create bits and sets with their jokes that worked, and they keep refining them until they have enough that creates a show. Then they do a show and they start touring. And then they keep refining. And then they start touring arenas or stadiums or theaters or whatever their size is. And then at the end, they film the Netflix special. And the point of the whole thing is it's instant, it's getting feedback from people. It's that feedback loop that I talked about earlier. And it's having conversations. The more conversations you have, the more feedback you get, the more you create a Netflix special. But you don't start with a Netflix special. That's why I also suggest not trying to start with a book, but actually going through this process, and then the book kind of writes itself. So I hope that helps.
A little bit, thank you.
You're welcome. Ronnie?
Hi, Gio. So I'm a little frustrated and a little confused, and it comes from the fact that my initial interaction with a client is basically transactional.
Yep.
They come to me, they want me to marry them, period. That's it. They think they can handle happily ever after on their own. And so even if I try to say, okay, their transformation just within that transaction is, I need to take them from, okay, you want me to marry you. Now I'm going to custom write a ceremony for you, and then I'm going to deliver it. That timeline varies. They can call me 2 weeks before their ceremony. They can call me 2 years before. In fact, I just had somebody 2.5 years the other day ask me, and she's a vendor in the wedding industry. That's always nice. Anyway, so I get kind of confused with how I can move these people, get them to buy into the map of needing more than just the initial transaction. And my timelines look very different than yours that you've said.
So is the idea that they start working with you after the ceremony?
Most of them sign on early on. They're not married yet. They want me to create their ceremony and marry them. And plant the seed the very first time that I meet them on doing premarital education. I don't require it, but I suggest it. I give them lots of testimonials of people who've done it, research that demonstrates why it's important. But a lot of clients nowadays are living together for 5 years, 7 years, 15 years by the time they decide to get married. And they really think, you know what, we got it going on anyway. We don't need premarital education. There's nothing we can learn from you. We've been dating each other now for 3 years. And I really know the transformation that I can give them if they sign on for that.
Okay, so here's my suggestion, and I think this will be very helpful for you. Imagine you had a client approach you that was your dream come true because they said yes to everything you suggested. And because you know exactly, like, you know, if they just did, or not even just, if they did all of these things, A, B, C, D, all the way to the ceremony itself, and then anything that has to happen after, like your dream path for someone, and they say yes to everything, what does that actually look like? And then to also think about, and I'm sharing this with you, but it's really applicable for everybody. You already have a process. It's probably not packaged like that, but so let's say I'm interested in working with you and I call you, and what's the first thing we do?
First thing we do is we set up a time when I can meet with you and your sweetheart and we can get to know each other.
Right. So that call needs to be called or branded or named something, not just a consultation, because that's the challenge a lot of people in our world have. It's like, well, I'll give you a free consultation, or we'll do our initial call or an assessment call or whatever it is. But what if you called it the honeymoon forever session? No, well, what's that? Because if you say consultation, like, yeah, okay, I get it. We're just going to call and you're going to ask me questions. But if you say the honeymoon forever session, it creates curiosity. And you say, yeah, that's the first phase of my process called blank, where during this session, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to make sure X, Y, and Z happens. And then, so you dictate the path based on what you know is the ideal journey for people. And then you say, and then after that, our next thing that happens is this, and you name it something different, a unique name that's differentiated by you. And then you show them the entire map and say, if you want a successful marriage, I'm just making up language. If you want this thing that you really want, these are the things you need to do. Like I'll try to come up with an analogy that works, but if you discover you have an ailment that's making you anxious, and you're like, oh man, I need to see a specialist. And you go to the specialist, do they ask you if you, would they say, maybe you should take this drug? What do you think? Like they prescribe. They say, oh, first you got to take 3 milligrams of this, then you got to do this other thing over here. And you say, yes, doctor. And it's that energy that all of us need to have as the leader and the guide to say, this is the prescription to get to this transformation. And by packaging it in a unique way with very specific branding and naming, not just for the process, but for every milestone of it, they can't compare you to anybody else. You're the only person saying this to them. That makes you unique. That makes the whole thing way more valuable. And then you can really increase pricing because they can't go to someone else and say, well, well, you charge this much for this, they charge that, they're cheaper, then I'm gonna go over there. You're literally the only one in the world that does this for a very unique type of person. So your mission, and everybody's mission, is to figure out the dream path that, like, if someone said yes to everything you would offer, what are all the phases for that? And that could become the brainstorm of the map. And then we can continue the conversation around what to do next. Alex.
Hi.
Hi.
My clients often tell me that they don't know what they don't know, which is, I guess, why they're coming to me. So when I ask them the kryptonite question, they don't actually know what to say, and there's often silence, and then I'm okay with the stillness and the silence, but
Okay.
I try and move it along a little bit after that. So do you have any advice of how I can get them talking about their kryptonite?
Okay, so in the conversations you have had with people and then clarity happens, what is or has been the potential kryptonite? What has come up?
What's come up is they've had lots of chaos in all their note writing and journaling and trying to put their books together. And when they see me, they feel like they've got so much more clarity and that they're taken care of.
Okay, so going through this process, it's again, it's like a chicken and egg thing, but you kind of eventually will reverse engineer into creating the map. But imagine one of the parts of your map is to get clarity on how to do this thing. You can actually, your question could be on a scale of 1 to 10, how clear are you on blank? So instead of saying, what's the kryptonite? It's on a scale of 1 to 10, how much clarity do you have on this specific thing? So you, instead of, if they don't know what they don't know, you know what they don't know, you might as well ask the questions so that they gain clarity of what they don't know. Does that help?
It does, thanks. It's a reframe that I hadn't considered. It's great, thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll do Jenna had an IP question. We'll do this quick and then we will end for today. And I'll give you your mission again.
Yeah, just what's your take on trademarking, and do you when to do it? Like I feel like I should, and then there's like doing it yourself and hiring somebody, and I've gotten quotes, but I just haven't done anything.
So what I've been taught is that, and this is kind of cool, when you create a map like this, you can put a TM on anything, you know, the little TM, which means trademark. And any of us can do that, and you don't have to pay for that. It's now, if you want to go the next step of making it legal, you go through the process with a lawyer, and then you get the R, which is a registered trademark, R with the circle, and then it's a lot easier like to defend. These things can get tricky if someone there's always going to be people ripping off other people's stuff, even if it's registered or whatever it is. But once you've defined the process, like you start using TMs right away, especially if you're using, like after you follow my process, you're going to come up with unique names for everything, put a TM so that it at least shows that you're claiming it. And then after you've refined it and you're like, you know what, this is the thing, this is it, then you can go through the process. It'll cost you a few thousands of dollars, but that's to protect the brand of it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, someone suggested somebody. Yeah, I've gotten anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 so far in terms of like global, like, do you want just the one country, or somebody else messaged me and said they were interested in it too. Like, you can trademark different countries and all that kind of stuff, which is why you hired a lawyer to answer your questions. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so as your mission for the week, you'll get the 90-day North Star tool to start thinking about what the one promise could be, what the kryptonite could be, and what the superpowers could be. And then we'll start massaging and working out what the milestones of your map will be. So thank you all again for today, and I'll see you all very soon.